All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to my podcast, the Tracy Donegan podcast. And I'm delighted to invite, pronounce your name for me, Shaz.
I go by Shaz just because my full name is harder for English-speaking people to pronounce. My full name is Shahrazad. You might have heard it as Shahrazad, the storyteller, the 1001 Nights.
All
But
right. Yes.
I go by Shaz here. I'm sorry.
Shaz. Okay. I can get my get my Irish pronunciation around that.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
So I'd love to hear a little bit about where you started in your career and what you are now a lactation consultant, and you do craniosacral therapy as well. So how did you get here?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your podcast, Tracy. I was a midwife in Iran. I'm originally from Iran. I live in Canada, Vancouver, B.C. Beautiful, gorgeous city. I'm blessed to be living here. Many people complain about the rain. I'm thankful for it. I come from a desert, so every day is a blessing. And in Iran, I was a midwife for 18 years. And when I came to Canada, first of all, unfortunately, they don't, like, there's bridging programs and all that for internationally trained healthcare providers. And I wasn't able, just because of lifestyle with my son and all that, I wasn't able to go back to university for that intention. Otherwise, that was my hope to be a midwife here as well. So I started working as a doula and childbirth educator. And then I slowly did my courses to become a lactation consultant. And since 2013, so it's 10 years now that I am a lactation consultant. I came across craniosacral therapy when my son was born. So I have two kids. My daughter is 27. They're by the time the podcast is shown, they're 28 and 17. And when my son has Down syndrome, and I came across craniosacral therapy a lot from other parents and Google, what to do to improve his the quality of his life. And it did help him. Like, we didn't have craniosacral therapists in Iran, and most doctors didn't even know about it. So I knew we were coming to Canada. He was 2 years old when we came here, and we started getting treatments for him. And I noticed that it was helping him. And since his condition isn't something acute that needs, 5 treatments, 10 treatments, it's a lifelong journey, right? And so just out of being cheap, I couldn't afford doing all these visits. So I borrowed from my line of credit, did the course, and I'm doing it all my life for him. But that's one of the blessings he's brought to my life, that I'm helping other families and bringing income as well. So craniosacral therapy is a very gentle touch treatment that helps the body get into self-healing. And the marriage of these two skills, being a lactation consultant and craniosacral therapist, has been, I was not expecting this. Honestly, it's beautiful because, as you know better, like how birth impacts the way they breastfeed. And if there's any trauma, both physical and emotional, but most of the times it's just physical, like the tightness in their neck and the hyoid bone under their tongue, or some compression on in their skull. That can be resolved by, like, babies don't need a lot of treatments. 1 or 2 sessions might be enough, and then you see the improvement in the breastfeeding. It's fascinating, mind-blowing.
It's so interesting because when I was living in Ireland, and CST, it's actually quite popular in Ireland, and a lot of the lactation consultants would also recommend for if baby isn't latching or there's something else going on, where you feel like, maybe there was an instrumental, and baby has a sore neck, but it's here in the US. I haven't heard of it.
Same here in
Canada. The breastfeeding. Yeah.
I am recently getting, like, the more people have heard about it and more anecdotal, Like now I have midwives refer even their clients that, oh, this baby, we know the birth, like it was difficult, and
Yeah.
this baby would benefit. And most of the times they also have breastfeeding issues. Yeah.
And is CST, would that be helpful for a mom who's had birth
Absolutely,
trauma?
absolutely. So the beauty of craniosacral therapy is that we don't need to diagnose. I, as a craniosacral therapist, don't have the skills to diagnose, but we don't need to do that because we're not. The person who's giving the treatment, is not doing anything to the body. It's the body going into self healing. So my skill would be to feel the rhythm in the fascia. It's not energy work. A lot of people, because it doesn't look like we're doing anything, they think it's energy work. It's from my case, it isn't. It's biomechanical. So
Right.
I touched any part of it, so I'm showing up here, but mostly it's in the sacrum, abdomen, chest. But you just gentle touch, and my training, my skill is to feel the rhythm in the body, in the fascia, and if the rhythm isn't moving freely, I just stay there longer. And how deep I hold, how long I hold, that's my skill. The body, that awareness. Causes that healing happen. And the younger the person is, and in my case, all the babies I work with, much better results than adults. But in the case of mom and baby at a birth, when I give them treatments at the same time, so baby's on mom's chest, mom's lying down on the bed, and I'm working on both their sacrum. My hand would be under
Okay.
mom's bum, when my other hand would be on top of over baby's bum, and it's fascinating. It just multiplies the effect of individual treatments. And moms also, if they've gone through, had forceps, vacuum, cesarean, or I don't know, very long births or damage to their perineum, they would definitely benefit. Uh, Everyone would benefit from CST.
So for somebody who has, this is the first time they've heard of CST, but they might be aware of chiropractic care,
Mm-hmm.
which I know is very, very different. So, and I think sometimes when you see some of the videos online of chiropractic care with young babies, it can be quite concerning with the force that seems to be used. So tell me how CST is different to the chiropractic
That's
adjustments
a
that we
very
tend
good
to see.
That's a very good question. Well, the chiros, I know that I refer my babies for chiro as well, and they're very gentle on babies, but still the force of the treatment is coming from outside of the baby's body, the person's body, whereas in craniosacral is from within the body.
Mm.
And so I always ask my own clients that if they're getting chiro, that not to have it on the same day that we're getting craniosacral, just because again the source of the healing power is different. So the chiropractor has to diagnose first of all, like if
Mm.
what is the reason that the baby's neck is like this, and then address the muscle that is maybe pulling tight, torsion or something. In craniosacral, we don't need to diagnose because we're not going to make any adjustments. So I'll be holding a baby's neck. It's again, every time I work on babies, it's like a first time for me to see, because every baby is so unique. But I'll be touching their neck, just touch. If I go a little bit harder, if I press a little bit harder, I'm going to go touching and feeling the muscles, whereas I just should feel the fascia. There's that thin layer of membrane that covers the whole body, like a one-piece stocking. And then if I touch, and then if there is tightness here, I'll just hold longer. And then you see the baby that might by herself, she might just do this. And then guess what? Oh, now it's in the right spot. I didn't do that motion. I didn't force the neck to move. It was from inside that she kind of realized, and she moved her neck. And sometimes their whole body, you have a 5-day-old baby who rolls over, completely rolls over during a treatment. And they open up a torsion that was in their body. And those babies were usually babies who were needed. I'm not questioning the need for that intervention in birth. We just have to acknowledge that if there was interventions,
Yeah.
there might be things that we have to address. And those are the babies who roll over, are the most of the times are babies who needed some help with rotation. And then so something, there might be a torsion in their fascia, they open it, and then they feel good. Most of the times that um, the feedback from my clients is that the baby was crying a lot. Like one of the most, other than breastfeeding,
Yeah.
I'm also a lactation consultant. That's obviously that comes to me. But then after breastfeeding issues, for a baby who has imbalances, is they're crying. A lot of the times they're crying a lot, and their doctors, unfortunately, would say, "Oh, it's just colic. They'll grow out of it." I'm afraid I don't
Yeah.
accept that answer. I don't agree. It's not healthy for mom or baby, the whole family, for a baby to cry so much. And by just uh, sweeping it under the carpet, the label of colic, and not doing
Yeah.
anything about it, is helpful for anyone. And I can say almost all the babies I've worked with that were labeled colicky all improved within a couple of sessions. Even babies don't need a lot of treatments.
I was about to ask, so is there kind of a standard prescription of treatments, or it's just based on what you feel baby needs at that
Yeah,
point? Yeah.
yeah. Baby will tell, like when I feel the baby, for example, I give the first session, I give a treatment. The second session, I'll have more information from their body to be able to tell parents if they need more or not. If they're completely balanced, the second session, that's all they need. You can't overdo it, so you can have treatments, craniosacral treatments once a week for the rest of your life, and you cannot overdo it. It's just balance, 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 right?
Is
But
there any option for, because I know the Canadian healthcare system is a little different to the US and more like Europe, but is there any insurance coverage for CST or?
well, not in Canada. Again, ours is, everyone thinks it's really good, but in some aspects, of course, it's really good. But like for example, lactation consultations are not covered by the insurance, the MSP, which is, or in BC it's called MSP, the healthcare system, and people have to pay out of pocket, and so is craniosacral, unless they have extended health insurances, and then some of those will
Might
reimburse,
have it.
which is sad. If a baby is having breastfeeding issues and mom is going 5 times, 7 times to her doctor, who you and I know were not trained in breastfeeding,
Yeah.
and but the government is paying the doctor every time they go to that visit. And I don't mean that the doctor is doing anything uh, like ill meaning, like
No,
they
sure. Yeah.
instructions and recommendations based on their knowledge, and unfortunately their knowledge is not complete. I always tell my prenatal classes, do you take your car to a mechanic who just did a weekend workshop on mechanic? You don't. You want to make sure that they have the training, they have the experience.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, our pediatricians, our doctors, and recently midwives are better, but until recently, at least I'm talking about Canada, they weren't trained in lactation either. So, and then you have someone who says, "Oh, I've seen my doctor for 6 times," and they've even told me, "You know what? Yeah, some people are just not meant to breastfeed." I see that
Yeah.
you hear that a lot too, and that
Yeah.
kills me. I mean, I didn't mention about my documentary, but I have a documentary called Mammals, and it's all about how is that even possible? Where did this concept come that I hear this so many times that it just like,
Yeah.
if this was the ratio that women couldn't breastfeed or our babies couldn't breastfeed, we would have been extinct by now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So as soon
So
as
yeah, sorry, go. I was going to say I'm excited to hear about the documentary and how you made a decision to make this documentary. Can you
yeah,
tell us a little bit about your journey to making
of
your
course.
mammals?
So it goes back again to the 18 years I was a midwife in Iran. I didn't see anywhere close to the challenges I've seen here in Canada Like the 18 years, I rarely had breastfeeding issues, clients with breastfeeding issues. And I was a midwife, right? So it wasn't like I wasn't working with moms and babies. But here in now it's 10 years, I'm a lactation consultant. But before, when I started making the documentary, let's say in 6 years, I had seen way more breastfeeding issues than I had seen in the 18 years in Iran. And I couldn't understand. It's like, why do Iranian women have different mammary glands? Do our babies have different mouth structures? Which clearly is not the reason. And I realized that that's the instructions that our healthcare providers are teaching, are giving new moms. That is the problem. That is the problem. Again, no bad intentions. That's how they were taught as well. But we have to think if in a culture, in a community, in a country, that something is having a lot of challenges, we have to look at the reason, the underlying reason. Like I always say, like if in my video I mentioned that 92% of women in North America have breastfeeding issues. Again, we'd be extinct if there was any complication, if there was any physiological function that 92% of it was failing, we would look deep into what is it that this physiological, like let's say a country 92% of babies born had heart issues. We look at what is the problem that in that community that's causing this problem. We don't just bring in more cardiologists and make more hospitals for, this is what we're doing with breastfeeding. We're just making more tools and training more lactation consultants. And so for me, it was the more I saw moms as a lactation consultant with with their breastfeeding issues, I realized, oh, the only thing I do, majority of the times, not always, there are rare cases that the problem is much more complicated, but majority of times, all I do is put the ball in baby's court. Say, stop latching the baby, stop going to following these 20 steps of how to do this, and let baby do it like any other mammal, And gradually, that mammalian approach, I just thought, okay, I'm saying this over and over, and I am still, even with the documentary, I'm still saying it over and over, but I just thought, okay, maybe I'll make a documentary and show people, if we don't restrict the baby, how much they're capable of doing that. And it's been beautiful. It's being used in universities and colleges, in ILCA, International Lactation Consultant Association. And so that's how it's the difference in practice that I noticed being a midwife in Iran and more. I mean, they're not, now it's different in Iran because they're also following now YouTube channels. And
I was about to ask if, just because it's interesting to me when I look at how the development of the profession of lactation consultants even began. It's all kind of linked in together. It's like when we medicalized birth and we brought everybody into the hospital, and then we lost touch with, as Michelle O'Donnell talks about, undisturbed birth or mammalian birth, and we kind of threw everything out the window, and then we followed on then with doing the same with breastfeeding. So we've almost created the very problem. Is because I think in countries where there's really high levels of extended breastfeeding, and where they don't seem to have a lot of problems, I wonder, are there a lot of lactation consultants, or there are very few lactation consultants because there's no demand other than for complicated issues like a tongue tie or something else that's going on.
Exactly.
So in Iran today there
are. Yeah. But before, when I told my mom, we're doing video chat, they're in Iran and I'm here, and I'm telling them, I'm becoming a lactation consultant. And my mom is like, and we had a great aunt, an old aunt, that she didn't have babies herself. And, but she would go and help, like everyone who would have a baby, even far relatives, they'd call her. She would go there the first day, stay the day there, and help them, if they had any
Yeah.
challenges. And my mom's like, and she was illiterate, okay, but she was around enough babies and moms to
Mm.
understand the mechanism and the physiology. And my mom's just like, "You're going to be like auntie?" And I said, "Yeah." After all this. Yeah. But the thing is that um, the the thing with places that breastfeeding is going better, like in villages and rural areas around the world, is that we always say it takes a village, but we don't have that village around us. And most of these women, from the time they were little, they've been around other women breastfeeding. They've seen it so much that it is second nature. I mean, it's just like,
Yeah.
that's how it is. They've heard enough babies' cries that they could actually, by, I don't know, they babysat their own little siblings or
Hmm.
cousins and all that. They've always been around babies. So they can understand different tones of cries. Whereas here we have to do a course on that, and people have to read
Yeah.
about it and watch YouTube videos. Whereas if you grow up with it, so part of it, it's not all our medical system, but part of it is the lack of that inclusion. Just growing up with breastfeeding, we we don't have we
Yeah.
unfortunately in the Western world it's rare. Not that it's not possible, but the more a woman, a little girl has been around breastfeeding moms and babies, the more likely that she'll do
Of
just
course.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how is your approach to breastfeeding different to other lactation consultants, for example?
Yeah. So it's funny that I'm known, even before my documentary in Vancouver, I'm known for the lactation consultant with the mammalian approach. And my friend was once listening to that, heard that on a podcast that they were mentioning me and said, Shaz, that's, the lactation consultant with the mammalian approach. And they just said,
What other approach is there?
it's like, compared to what? What else other kind of approach do you
We try
have?
the reptile approach today, or
That's exactly the word they use. They said reptile as compared to reptile approach. Like, what are your colleagues doing that you're known for the
yeah,
uh, mammalian approach? It's sad. It's sad. I mean, I'm honored to have that title, but it's sad that not everyone is like that. We are mammals, and the fact that around breastfeeding, all our babies do the same. We're not like all other mammals in all other aspects, right? But physiologically, something so physiological, uh, all mammals, it's the baby doing the work and not the mom. Whereas here, I don't know, for those who haven't been exposed to what they've been taught by, other lactation consultants or their midwife or their doctor, is basically hold your baby, cross your
mm,
body, hold the base of the head, hold your breast, shove it on. Oh, put his hands
yeah,
away because his hands in the way, and then shove him on there. And oh, it hurts. Well, everyone hurts. Get used to it. Your nipple's going to get used to it. And this is all wrong. There should be no pain. I breastfed both my kids. And even for my son who has Down syndrome and premature and lots of like surgery and separation the first day he was born, he still breastfed beautifully. He's breastfed both of my kids. So how can I, for my daughter, it was my first time breastfeeding. The fact, like I tell my clients in prenatal classes, if anyone, and I'm using this platform also to tell a broader audience, that if anyone tells them that it's normal, that it hurts or your nipple will get used to it, respectfully cross them off of your support for
yeah,
lactation, because they don't know how breastfeeding works.
mm,
If a mom is feeling her nipple in baby's mouth, which will be pinching, then if
mm,
she's feeling it, baby's not going to be getting milk, and her nipple's going to be damaged. There's going to be a crack. There's going to be a source of entry of pathogens to her breast, mastitis, and then we're
mm,
wondering, oh, we'll just find tools to help her with her mastitis, or nipple creams and tools for her nipple. This is a pillow to hold the baby like this. We're getting further and further away of that physiological way of breastfeeding. Whereas 90% of the time, 90%, I see clients, I ask them to let go of baby's restrictions, like lie down, either put your baby back, put the baby on you, and then the baby. Why would nature put their own hands in their own way of survival? It's in mom's way of latching the baby. And in nature, moms don't latch the baby. Even in Farsi, the term that we have for latch, the exact translation is baby taking the breast. Who is doing it? It's the baby doing it, right? Whereas here in our most highly rated breastfeeding educational videos, the doctor would say, oh, we teach moms how to latch the baby. That means the baby's not, first of all, it's we, the healthcare providers. We teach moms. Then it comes in teaching, and you know that teaching is using your left brain and breastfeeding is right brain. And then how to latch. So they're latching, then the baby comes like a little factor at the end. Whereas in all mammals, it's always the baby. I once saw a client, when I explained to her about other mammals, just the baby latching, she literally did this too. She said, you think I know, I'm a vet and I should know this because I've never had any of my patients basically for breastfeeding.
It's interesting as well when you look at, I used to have lots of vets come to my classes when I was teaching in Ireland, and we were talking not necessarily about breastfeeding but about birth, and how for the most part for healthy well women that they're supported and they're left alone, they will go into spontaneous labor, give birth. And we look at, well, what when vets are working with farmers, or they're working with these $1 million horses, like this one family I was working with were like horse breeders, and it's a huge industry, and how careful they were that those horses, everything was undisturbed, and it was very carefully coordinated to protect the hormonal balance and to protect that hormonal dance. And then so the farmers and the vets totally got undisturbed birth and the importance of it. But then, even when I talk to midwives about undisturbed birth and doulas, and for the most part these days, most people get it, that undisturbed means we're kind of standing back, we're watching, we're supporting when needed, but we trust that mom and baby are doing this together, and they've, mom's body knew how to grow baby from 2 cells and knew where to put baby's fingernails and eyelashes. It knows how to finish the job. But yet, once baby was born, then it was like we didn't trust that mom and baby knew what they were doing anymore. It was like, then it became hands-on.
Exactly. I tell midwives that they're, sometimes they make this joke about home births, or just they say that midwifery courses should also have some knitting courses in it, because midwives should be hands off and just sitting there knitting a hat maybe for a baby while mom is so. And a lot of the times they not just necessarily knit, but they are hands off, as you're saying. The trust is there, but after birth, after they do their paperwork or the placenta stitches and everything, and then all of a sudden, what else do I do? It's the same midwife that didn't interfere in birth all of a sudden interferes with breastfeeding in the intention of helping, obviously, but that intention of helping, why wasn't there in labor? And I explained that in my video as well. When I was training, studying midwifery many years ago in Iran, episiotomy was routine then. Every first time mom got an episiotomy, and the intention, with all good intention, was that we speed up second stage of labor. We now know that we don't need that intervention unless it's medically necessary. the same midwife that would be there for maybe 4 hours of not doing anything except for helping mom change position, all that, and the pushing was taking long, she didn't take out the scissors to give mom an episiotomy to speed this up. But for breastfeeding, the same midwife is going to come and start interfering with the intention of helping. So I think that's something that our midwifery community, because the reason I say midwifery and not doctors is because midwives are better known for their hands-off approach in birth, but unfortunately they forget that in breastfeeding. They lose that trust, I feel, the same as you're saying, the same trust that they had.
And I don't want to, tar everybody with the same brush. There are midwives who do totally get it, and or if sometimes if mom has a doula with her who can kind of protect that space for her. It is an interesting disconnect, and I think in some countries where breastfeeding, even though you've got the government on one hand saying, oh, we need to do better, but yet little investment from not just in Ireland, in the US as well, not enough investment in actually protecting breastfeeding.
I think we've done a disservice to moms actually by opening their eyes to the importance of breast milk and breastfeeding, but then not educating our healthcare providers in that support. So now, before, maybe 40 years ago, if breastfeeding wasn't going well, it wasn't a big deal for a mom to use formula. She was actually encouraged to use the formula at that time. But now, if a mom, for actually medical reason, for her well-being of her baby, needs to use formula, she's now hesitant because of now she's aware of the difference between formula and her own milk. And that's why, we did a disservice, because by opening her eyes to the importance of breast milk, now she rightfully, she doesn't want to just easily go to formula, but we don't have the healthcare system to support her decision.
Yeah. And I think that's part of why so many, moms feel so let down, because the whole, breast is best message is still out there and pushed, like, it's in the ether now, and I think when women, I think there's compared to birth, there is a lovely confidence when I'm working with moms that of course I'll breastfeed. There's never really, and I know that there's never, I've rarely meet with moms who have like absolutely not. They're like, they assume, of course I will. That's what I'm going to do. And then because we've just made it so complicated, and we've, and no putting your baby in bed with you, and we just made it like, let's make it as really tough as we can for these women who have just been through one of the most physically demanding days of their lives, and let's just make it really hard for them. It's no wonder like women are pissed because they've been fed this line that this is the best for your baby, this is the best for you, and then when the rubber meets the road,
these are all the hurdles that you have to go through.
And it's almost like that, like it's one of the first tests of motherhood. If you get this one right. But if you don't, what does that say about you as a mom? The messaging out there is, and that's why we have people writing about breastfeeding grief and trauma, and because they were so ready and to do this, and then they come out the other side and they feel like they were sold a lie, which like. They just got half of the story, and then we just messed up the end of it and made it so that people don't even want to attempt breastfeeding now.
Well said. And I'm crazy about breastfeeding. I'm obsessed with breast milk. I have encouraged some women to wean because of the impact all this has had on their mental health. And I tell them, your baby can survive and be well on formula, but they can't be well on a mom who is not mentally well. So if we can't address the issue, and unfortunately, again, because of our medical system in Canada, I see clients usually, not always, when the damage has been kind of, like I see them later in their breastfeeding journey, like they've exhausted all their resources that were covered by our insurance. And then they come to me. So I see them when the damage has been done, and still 90% of them, all I do is say, just hands off, let baby do it. And they start crying. And like, it could have been this easy all this time. And that breaks my heart. I'm happy that I was able to help them, but it breaks my heart, the emotional grief, the grief that they had. Like, if I see them at 5 weeks, well, they've gone through 5 weeks of, as you said, after maybe a major surgery, cesarean, or traumatic vaginal birth, or not, even a very smooth home birth.
Yeah.
Still, that was a very tough journey. Their baby was not thriving. They maybe were hospitalized. They were jaundiced. They needed, supplementation. And then all you do is you just put the ball in baby's court, and they just can't believe it. It's just like, this could have been this easy. Yeah.
It's I guess one of the reasons why I developed kind of the mindful breastfeeding program was part of it was to support the women who were experiencing this grief. But I didn't want to just do it for that. I wanted to create a more of a preventative measure, so that, because we just saw the Embrace report came out of the UK, and we're looking at some like the top reasons for maternal death is suicide the first year after birth. We have huge mental health issues, and we have a great opportunity between prenatal classes and breastfeeding classes to give parents a couple of tools so that they can support their own mental health in what is going to be one of the biggest transitions of their adult lives. Yeah. And it might be the first, I guess, kind of big kind of crisis they've been in their adult life, or the first, for a lot of women, it's the first interaction they've had even with a hospital, or when they get into maternity services. So, I wanted to give women tools so that, so they can be mindful about, their inner talk, and how we talk to ourselves in pregnancy, and how we talk to ourselves if we're having breastfeeding problems. And I think of like all of the women who had to stop breastfeeding early for whatever reason, and those women who are left with those emotions and nowhere to put them, nobody to help them to kind of process this grief. I thought we're doing our best to support breastfeeding moms, but when we look at the rates of non-breastfeeding, of the moms who've had to stop before they wanted to.
That's a very key point that you're mentioning. I love it. Before they wanted to, because someone would have just planned, I want to breastfeed for 2 weeks. That's it.
Exactly.
It's about that earlier than they intended, because of majority of times it's because of challenges.
Yeah, and pain, and it's like there's I think we know so much now with the most recent evidence about laid back, and for reducing nipple pain, and throwing the cross cradle out the window. Like, we know so much, but it just feels like we're still stuck so far in the past with that, what I call vintage style, old school traditional breastfeeding tuition. But it's I think it's changing, especially with with your video out there and everything. I think it's we're getting to a place, I think more women are being more proactive about their breastfeeding education, and not just working with the assumption that it's natural, of course I'll be able to do it. That we really kind of help them understand, okay, based on what kind of class you've taken may actually make your breastfeeding journey easier or more difficult. So we want them to be really kind of conscious consumers when they're looking for that breastfeeding instruction or breastfeeding classes. Sometimes the local hospital is probably not going to be most evidence-based, as we know from when we look at even just birth practices, that there is an assumption, I did it too, that when you walk in the doors of a hospital, that the care you receive is going to be based on international best practice. That's an assumption nobody should be making these days. We have to advocate for ourselves and our babies. So I want to a couple of questions that I want to ask around being an IBCLC. So when you became a lactation consultant, Was there one aspect of it that surprised you or that you weren't expecting in this line of work?
I It's a hard one to say. For me, it's the emotional part. That's that heart pain that I get
Yeah,
when I see a mom who is struggling, and that has been and sometimes I can say it's a mixed emotions. Sometimes I'm angry at the healthcare provider. To be honest, it's just like I want to tell the mom that was wrong, but at the
yeah,
same time it's my colleague, right? How can I, and I tell them, and I truly believe it's just different approaches, right? But
yeah,
it wasn't working for her. And I always say, if my approach isn't working for you, you have to seek another approach then. It's
yeah,
not that it's what I say, it's like that's it. That's the it has to work for a mom and baby. What it means to work is that there's no pain and baby is getting all their needs from the breast, unless mom has to, like in the States, I know moms have to go to work sooner than Canada. And so she has to, when she's away from the baby, she'll be pumping. But when she's with the baby, if it doesn't hurt and baby is getting their needs, all their needs from the breast, and she's comfortable, then that's the approach for her, whatever that is. If she's doing the cross cradle, and I always tease about my approach, like my how I'm against basically the use of cross cradle and football hold. And I say,
hmm,
no one comes and pays me to see how cross cradle is going
yeah,
well for them. So I am biased against that because every mom I'm seeing for breastfeeding issues is using the cross cradle or the football
yeah,
hold. So um, that just tells you that that can't be working. And the same mom and baby, all I do is, free the baby's head and not that restriction on their head. And then the baby latches on, and mom's just like, is she even latched on? That's how good it feels. And then the baby's done in, I don't know, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, whereas she was feeding for 40 minutes and still needed to pump and top up because the baby wasn't getting all their needs from the breast. So
hmm,
that frustration that I can say that I have about that, um, how our healthcare providers are helping families, and then the heartbreak that I have when I see, like, sometimes I'm working on that to kind of detach myself from the mom, but I feel like I'm every baby's grandma, and it just
hmm,
like I it's not like a file, other jobs that you can just close it, put it aside.
yeah,
It comes with me. Sometimes I can't sleep.
hmm.
I saw a baby that
Oh,
did,
yeah,
or the mom's tears about how
yeah,
she was told, "Oh, you don't have enough milk." Some people just don't make enough milk, and yet the baby's satiated, and she texts me 3 days after that they haven't topped up even once, um, and she's just over the moon. And that, of course, that's joyful and blessed, a blessed feeling for me, but at the same time heartbreaking that she wasn't offered that to begin
yeah,
with. It took her 6 weeks to get there. Yeah,
yeah. I think it is hard and heart work
yeah, it
and
is.
soul work.
Yeah, it is.
And you want you I think in our line of work, we, with being midwives, and we are, more holistic approach is that we want to know about the full mother. We want to hear about her life. We want to, because we know all of this influences her parenting journey. And I
Exactly.
think for you have, the pediatrician or other or GP, even, they're just, again, meaning well,
Of
but
course.
don't have the skills and don't have the time to give to them, because sometimes it's just women just want to be heard. They want to, and with no judgment, and just,
Yeah.
tell us what's going on, because they've just been given so much kind of bad advice after bad advice that they're not. I don't blame them for being distrustful when it comes to, trying to get breastfeeding back on track, or even to have trust in the medical community alone if you've had a bad breastfeeding experience,
Yeah.
to rebuild that kind of confidence. So let's take a step back then. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self
Oh, that's a
one
long
piece,
time ago.
one piece of advice. Not too long, I wouldn't think.
Okay.
Only that one piece, Shaz. You can only get one piece of advice. What would it be?
Well, not to marry the person I married, but I guess that wasn't your question. It's more career.
No, let's dive in there. We'll come back to that topic on the next podcast.
I truly, it might sound very cliche, but I would do the same thing again. I'm so blessed to have chosen a career, a path that I love every moment of it. When people say, oh God, thank God it's Friday, or ooh, Monday. And I'm like, do a job that you love and you look forward to a Monday. There's like, I want to go to work. I want to help. And and I if I'm born again, I do the same thing. I knew I wanted to be a midwife at 14. I just knew it. And the best part of midwifery, after I came to Canada and I started working with breastfeeding specifically, is actually the breastfeeding part of it. It's like, oh, I'm with moms and babies, I'm helping them, but I don't have the stress of the birth or late night or long extended hours at birth and all that. And I have a special needs child, so for me, schedule is a very big deal, and I couldn't have done it in midwifery. So I'm blessed. I'm blessed.
That's lovely to hear, because it's not often you hear people will say that. Yeah, I'm actually really happy with how things have unfolded, and I think maybe that comes with age as well. It's like, yeah, I'm good. It's like I can see each step that got me here.
Yeah, I've always been happy with my career. Life has thrown a lot of hurdles on my way, but career-wise, I've always been blessed. And I think if I'm born again, I'll go down the same path. Yeah.
Lovely. Shaz, tell us where people can find your documentary and your services.
Yeah. So my website is mamamilk.ca from Canada, and it's MAMA milk.ca. And there's a link to my documentary there as well. I have Instagram, Mama Milk Lactation, also a YouTube channel. Some parts of the documentary is on some clips of it is on YouTube for free. The documentary itself is for sale, and some institutes can purchase it at a different price, and they can give it to their students or members, whether for free or at a reduced cost. And colleges that have used that in their curriculum report really, really positive feedback. I get a lot of positive feedback from people who've either expecting parents, or healthcare providers who did courses at the college and universities. And I'm thankful for it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I enjoyed watching it last night. It was where we're so aligned with our approach, our mammalian approach. But thank you so much, Shaz, for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. This has been beautiful.
Have a look at
and I just one quick, I know I forgot to mention, but my next project is actually I'm designing a breast pump. And I am so excited about it. It's much more difficult than I thought it would be, but that's the next one, which is completely different from the breast pumps that we have in the market. So we'll see.
Lovely. Well, we will come back on and tell us all about the new breast pump when it's closer to launch. And I think you'll have lots of interest. It's a thing that's especially here in the US with, again, no maternity leave really. So
the biggest market for pumps is the need, and because there's very little. It's sad. It's sad that a new one should go back to work after a few weeks. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.